Okay, we have discussed, we had a power, Wi-Fi was interrupted in between. So where we have stopped is this alternate marine power, okay. See, alternate marine power, as we discussed, basically when the ships are loaded or unloading in a port or dock, alternate marine power is supplied to them. So it is basically it's a shore power. This is done with the help of supply cables that are plugged into electricity supply board in the port on one end and the ship's power supply board on the other end. And this, if you can see this diagram here, you can see how this shore power is given. Here the shore supply power station from here. Through this, they have connected the power to the ship's switchboard. And you see there's a sign over here, it's written AMP. So this has not been, it is already introduced in the different European ports, but you will not find it in all the ports probably like other countries. But it is an alternative power. So the whole purpose of this alternative power is to reduce the emissions and the effect of greenhouse gases. So whenever the ship is alongside, you have a power from the shore, no need to run the ship's onboard generators. The other one is the alternate is the LNG as an alternate fuel. Okay, so LNG is the main liquefied natural gas, has served as a marine fuel for many years. But primarily in LNG carriers are the carriers as boil-off gas. It is utilized in marine boilers and dual fuel engines. So before it was like the LNG was carried by ships, and whatever the boil-off means the LNG is transported at a temperature of minus 61.5 degrees at normal conditions. Okay, so during this transporting of LNG in the liquid state, there used to be boil-off gases. There will be, because of the boil-off, the gas will be there. And this gas was utilized in marine boilers and the dual fuel engines. So the olden, not olden, because the previous, the ships were the steam ships. So they used this boil-off gas from the tanks for running their boilers. So the gas was burned in the boiler. And then after that, we came the dual fuel engines. Dual fuel engines means so the engine can run in gas as well as the engine can run in MDO and HFO also. So this became a tri-fuel engines. So we have dual fuel engines, we have tri-fuel engines. Sorry. So nowadays LNG has been started say bunkering. LNG bunkering has been started. So the LNG, there are ships which has got the LNG tanks and they can use LNG for their engines as well as for the power, everything they can use the LNG. So it is only within the last decade that the growth of the LNG fuel vessel market has really taken in Europe. So the growth of the mentioned market is mainly due to the strict environmental regulations in coastal areas. So now LNG is being used as an alternate fuel. So given that onshore industries have been cutting emissions, ship emission is becoming a proportionally more significant part of total emissions. So before, as I told you, the LNG was only transported by the ships, and there were different type of ships. Like some of the ships, they can burn the gas in the boiler. Some of them can burn in the engines. Now LNG has been started as a bunkering also. So like it is an alternate fuel. Instead of fuel, you can the ships can take the LNG and make use of this for the propulsion as well as the power requirements. The properties of LNG is it's a colorless, odorless, flameless, flameful gas ignible by static electricity, extremely cold and volatile liquid. And vapor forms highly flammable mixture with air, which may cause flash fire. So you can see here the boiling point is minus 161.5 degrees at normal conditions. So the boiling point means it is a temperature and the pressure at which the material will convert from a liquid state to gas state. So that is the boiling point. So boiling point is a temperature. Now for the LNG it is minus 61, as the LPG is minus 42 for propane, and butane is minus 10. So boiling point is the temperature and pressure at which the material converts from liquid to vapor. Same like water. You see the boiling point of water is 100 degrees centigrade at atmospheric pressure. So same way like this, the boiling point of the LNG is minus 161.5 degrees centigrade. So that indicates that this temperature at atmospheric pressure, it will be converting from liquid to gases. Then the boiling point, then the flash point. The flash point basically, flash point means flash point is minus 181.8 degrees centigrade. Is a minus 181.8 degrees centigrade. Flash point is the lowest temperature at which it can form an ignitional mixture with the air. Okay, so flash point is the lowest temperature at which it can form an ignitional mixture with the air. Okay, that is the flash point. So boiling point, flash point. And then we can see here another one is called the auto ignition temperature. This auto ignition temperature is the lowest temperature to which it needs to be heated to cause a self-sustained combustion. That means it is the lowest temperature, it needs to be heated, but that temperature, then it will have a self-sustained combustion. So without any ignition or spark. So it doesn't need any external spark or a flame, it will have a self-combustion. So that temperature is known as the auto ignition temperature. So main things are the boiling point, flash point, auto ignition temperature, and molecular weight also plays very important role, because molecular weight of LNG is 16.04, whereas the air is 29. So the molecular weight of air is much higher. LNG, the molecular weight in the vapor state is 16.02. That is why whenever the LNG spills out, the LNG always, once it becomes warmer, the vapor becomes warmer around minus 106, then they become lighter than the air. So the LNG vapor become lighter than the air, and it will rise and disperse rather than collect near the ground. So instead of once the LNG is spilled out, it becomes a vapor and it goes above the air because the molecular weight of LNG is much lighter than the air. So it will always go up. It will not come to the bottom. So these are the properties of LNG. You can see boiling point, flash point, and auto ignition temperature. And one more is the flammable limits. You see the flammable limits 5% and 15%. 5% means it's called the LEL. That is the lower explosion limit. Lower explosion limit is 5%, and the upper explosion limit is 15%. So within these two brackets, that is between 5 to 15%, it is flammable. If it is less than 5%, it is not flammable because the concentration of the LNG or methane, we can say, because methane is the main constituent of the LNG. Methane is the main one. So less than 5%, the gas concentration is very thin, so it cannot burn. When it becomes 15%, that means the gas above 15%, the gas concentration is too high, so also it cannot burn. So in between this range, between LEL to UEL, that is 5% to 15%, this vapor is flammable. So that is why it is known as a flammable limits. So within this limit, it is flammable. Otherwise, it is not flammable. Less than 5% and above 15%, it is not flammable. Liquefied natural gas, the physical properties include flammable methane liquid. So main constituent is the methane, that is boiling temperature is minus 161 degrees centigrade. And it reduces its volume from 600 to 1. That means 1 meter cube of liquid, once it vaporizes, it becomes 1:600 ratio, the vapor. The vapor expansion ratio is 1:600. Okay. So that is why it is showing 1:600. 1 meter cube liquid becomes 600 times of the gas, 600 times gas. And it's a colorless, odorless, cryogenic liquid. Cryogenic means it's a cold liquid since it is at minus 162 and density is 426. So nowadays, most of the ships, we have LNG bunker ships. So these ships can give LNG to the other ships like passenger ships and container ships. They have the storage tank like HFO tanks and all. They have a storage tank for the LNG and they can use the LNG for their power requirements and propulsion center. So LNG is also used as an alternate marine power. Okay. So, so the next one is, this is from a handout for high voltage. There's a skin effect. Okay. So last class, I just give a brief introduction. What is this skin effect? It is a tendency of an alternating current to become distributed within the conductor. You see any cable you see, you have a conductor, you have an insulator. So skin effect means it's a tendency of the current to become distributed inside a conductor such that the current density is largest near the surface of the conductor. So once it comes to center part, the current density is very less, but at the surface side, it is very too much and decreases with a greater depth in the conductor. So it is a tendency for a high frequency current to flow on the surface of the conductor. And proximity effect is that the tendency of the current to flow in undesirable patterns. That is another thing. Because now the current is not concentrating to the center of the conductor, current is flowing at the outer part of the conductor. So what will happen in this case? It becomes a undesirable patterns the current can flow. It can flow in undesirable patterns, loops, or concentrated distributions due to the presence of magnetic field generated by the nearby conductors. And what are the factors affecting this? Mainly it is the skin effect increases with the increase in frequency. Because as the frequency increases, the impedance increases. So the total resistance of the cable also increases. It increases with the increase in diameter of the conductor and the shape of conductor. The skin effect is more in the solid conductor, less in the stranded conductor. That means if the stranded wires are there, it will be less. because solid conductor means one conductor. Standard conductors means like 5 wires, 5 conductors. So that will be less in case of standard conductors. Then the skin effect increases with the increase in the permeability of material. So this effect also affects the permeability. Permeability is the ability of the material to support formation of a magnetic field. So what is skin effect? It is a tendency of an AC current to become distributed within the conductor such that current density is larger near the outside, larger near the surface area of the conductor. And it is decreases with greater depth in the conductor. When it comes inside, it reduces. That is called the skin effect. And you can see here, this is a conductor here. This is concentration of the current is on the outer layer. That is known as the skin effect. So an alternating current in a conductor produces an alternating magnetic field. So whenever a current is flowing, it creates a magnetic field in around the conductor. When the intensity of the current in the conductor changes, the magnetic field also will change. And the change in magnetic field in turn creates an electric field, which will oppose the current change in the current density. This opposing electric field is called the counter electromotive force, or back EMF is. So the back EMF is the strongest in center and forces the conducting electrons to outside of the conductor. That is why the current is going towards the outer surface. So the current is coming less to center and current is going outer surface. So this is called skin effect. Why it is called skin effect? Because the current is more concentrating on the outer layer of the conductor. And what are the disadvantages? That this current flow will not be uniform. It will not be properly distributed. It take a different pattern when the current flows. So this is called the skin effect. And another one is the surge arresters. Okay, basically surge arrestor means it is like a varistor. Varistor means we are using varistors like in generators and all, because it's only to protect the surges. Surges means the transient voltages, sudden peak in the voltage. Suddenly the voltage just shoots up. When the voltage is just, suppose all of a sudden the voltage shoots up little bit, going up and down, that is called its transients. To reduce the transients, we are using surge suppressors. Even like extension board, you'll find the surge suppressors. The whole purpose of surge suppressor is to reduce the transient voltage. Transient voltage means intermittent voltage which is coming in between, just like spikes, voltage spikes. That is the purpose of these surge arresters. Varistor, how it works means, as the voltage varies, the resistance varies. It's the ways like that. So varistor means it's resistance with the different voltages. It changes its resistance. So that's the way it controls the voltage. So whenever any spikes comes, it increases the voltage and control it. That is a property of a varistor. So here, this type of surge arresters, what is shown here, we don't use on ships, but it is used only on shore. Surge arresters are used on shore. So surge arrestor is a device to protect electrical equipment from over voltage transients and caused by external or internal events. So switching times or lightning times, whatever the surge is there, to absorb that surge or to control the surge, we are using surge arresters. But in circuits and all, we are using varistors. Varistors is a semiconductor, it's like a resistance, but the property is that with voltage, variation in the voltage, the resistance varies. Like generator output and all, we are using varistors. So when there is a spikes comes, it will absorb the spikes. So to protect a unit of equipment from transients occurring on the attached conductor, transient means spikes. A surge arrestor is connected to the conductor just before it enters to the equipment. The surge arrestor is also connected to the ground and functions by routing the energy from an over voltage transient to ground. So it can be connected between a phase to ground also, and while isolating the conductor from the ground at normal operating voltage. This is usually achieved by using a varistor, which is substantially a different resistance at different voltage. So this type of surge arresters are there. We don't use on board ship. It is used only on a shore. Here we are using a zinc oxide, and it is a lightning arrestor. It's a very simple. They consist of an insulating house which is made up of porcelain, and inner column is made up of zinc oxide boxes inside this. And this will provide a voltage current nonlinear characteristics to serve as a main purpose of protection from over voltage. So this is a lightning arrestor. So this is with your high voltage. So what is here is only alternate fuels, that is alternate marine power, and alternate fuel is nowadays LNG is considered as an alternate fuel because the emission rate and greenhouse effects, it's not a greenhouse gas, so the effects are very less. So you can see various properties of LNG, as I told you, like boiling points, flash points, auto ignition temperatures, and flammable limits. So these are the properties, and the volume of expansion. Okay. So we've seen the high voltage, some of the topics to be discussed. So I made this some topics like a question answering type, okay? And so with reference to three-phase shipboard supply, enumerate the advantages and disadvantages of insulated neutral systems. Okay, so what are the advantages of neutral insulated systems? What are the disadvantages of neutral insulated systems? So first thing is that it avoids the risk of loss of essential services that was discussed in the last class. Like critical machineries should run. That is a prime advantage for our marine part. We are insulating the neutral, whereas in shore we are grounding the neutral, because in shore it is more for the human protections. But on board ship, the critical machinery can't be affected because in case of a single earth fault. Second thing, if the neutral is earthed and the short circuit is, if the neutral is earthed, because in this case we are discussing what are the advantages of neutral insulated. If the neutral is earthed, then in case of a short circuit, the fuse may blow off, the motor will become single phased. So motor may get burnt also. So that is advantage of neutral insulated comparing the neutral earthed. Second thing, in insulated system, one earth fault does not interrupt and earth leakage gives warning. Suppose in case there is one phase gets earthed also, like R and Y, RYB phase, one phase is grounded. There will be a leakage current to the ship's hull, but the machinery will continue to run. Okay. And low earth fault gives less fire risk. Second thing, disadvantage is that if there is one more earth fault comes on the different phase, it can become a short circuit, then it will trip. And tracing an earth fault is difficult in case of neutral insulated systems. And but on new insulated system, voltage to earth is √3 into phase voltage. Okay, because line voltage is phase voltage is line voltage divided by √3. So insulated system, it is √3 multiplied by phase voltage is the voltage to the earth, the leakage current, the leakage, we can say the leakage voltage. Okay, so these are the advantages and disadvantages. Okay. The next, in case of the neutral earthing, what is neutral earth systems? What are the type of neutral earthing systems? Neutral earth system means neutral of the generator is grounded through an NER. The whole purpose of the NER is to limit the fault current, and the NER value has to be the current, the limiting current should not be more than the generator full load current. That means current, the fault current what is flowing in this should not exceed more than the generator full load current. So generally it is used on high voltage ships, and basically, like you see in this case, there will be a leakage current, but these neutral earth systems are not allowed in tanker ships. So how you can get rid of this is that if you have a like isolation transformer can be placed. So if you can put an isolation transformer, because some of the tanker ships in the hazardous area, they don't use these neutral earth systems. So there they have a separate isolation transformer, they take the power from that. So high voltage systems on board ships are normally earthed via resistor connecting the generator neutral to earth. And the ohmic value of the resistor is usually chosen to limit the maximum earth fault current, not more than the generator full load current. And this is monitored by an earth fault relay to create an alarm and trips. So there is also a CT on this same line, on the NER line. which can sense any excessive current flowing and give an alarm also trip functions. Various type of neutral earthing. We have high impedance, that is high resistance, high reactance, also low impedance, low resistance, and low reactance type. What are the type of neutral earthing? High impedance, high resistance, low impedance, low resistance, low reactance type earthing. Now we'll discuss about this. Coming to the topic is the drives. Okay. So last class I told you this is very important topic. We have 3 drives which is used. We discussed. One is the line commutator inverters and voltage source inverters and cycloconverters. These 3 drives you must know how it is working and basic diagrams. So here this one is a line commutator inverter. So what is this line commutator inverter? The meaning is that, sorry, the load commutator inverter, we can say line also. The load commutator inverter means this is using thyristors, and the thyristors are switched off by the load. That is, it means load commutator inverter. Commutation means switching off. So you know in thyristors there are 2 ways you can switch off, either by natural commutation or by forced commutation. So here you can see this is a load commutator inverter, and they use thyristors as a switching devices on the both input and output bridge. So you have 2 bridges here. What is this bridge? This is the bridge. This is a positive bridge. This will become a negative bridge. Okay. So how it is working is, to control the load commutator inverter, square waves are used. Now this is basically, it's a rectifier like. It's a rectifier type. So it converts. And it converts into, the AC supply is given as an input, it converts into DC, and the DC is again converted back to AC. So to control load commutator inverter, square waves are used. The thyristor of the output bridge, are fired in step with a rotation of the motor and act as an electronic commutator. So this works by using a back EMF of the motor to also give a natural load commutations. Okay. So an application of a load commutator inverter is a synchronous motor speed controller, load commutator inverter, synchronous motor drive system. Inverter lies on the back EMF of the synchronous motor to provide reverse voltage. So as we know, like back EMF is what? Basically back EMF means a EMF is set up in synchronous motor. Suppose if you don't connect synchronous motor, you have a 3-phase input power, and also you have a rotor is having a DC supply. Is it? So you are giving a 3-phase AC supply to the stator, and you are giving a DC supply to the rotor. Now suppose if you don't give, let's say make a condition like, if you don't give an input 3-phase AC, you give only a DC supply to the rotor, and if the rotor is rotated, then what happens? When the rotor is rotated, it will cut the stator conductors and a EMF will be induced in the stator conductors. So that is the principle of a synchronous generator basically. So in this case, a back EMF is set up in the armature of the rotor flux, and which will oppose the applied voltage. So when in case of normally this type of load commutator inverter is used with a synchronous motor. Synchronous motor means you have 2 supplies, one from the stator, one from the rotor. So the back EMF which is generated by this synchronous motor is used to commutate this transistor, this thyristors. So here AC supply is given here. The AC is converted into DC. This is an inductor which will filter this DC and given to this thyristors. Now this thyristor is having a DC supply. It is being fired using a control circuit, and what we will do is this will convert this DC, this square wave pulse, into an AC. So it will be fired like this. You see the square pulses are coming. It's fired like this, but it will give a fluctuating, like you can say fluctuating DC or a sine AC like this. So the output will be like this. So this work by using a back EMF of the motor to give a natural commutation. So because of the motor back EMF, this thyristor will be cut off, commutated, but these thyristors are fired in steps. It is fired in steps with the rotation of the motor, and like a commutator, electronic commutator, it works. So it converts the DC supply into an AC supply by firing this thyristor in an order so that it produces an AC output voltage. Here you can see here, this is a symbolic diagram here, and this is using only thyristors. So you can, this one also same. So what are the parts here you can see here in this? One is a rectifier part. This is a rectifier. This is a rectifier, and this is an inverter. This is an inductor. This is a synchronous motor. Synchronous motor has got two supplies, one for the rotor excitation and one for the, which is coming to the stator. So rectifier is a line commutator. Line commutator means it's an AC supply. So as soon as when the AC goes to positive to negative half cycle, this will cut off. So this is a natural commutation. Rectifier is line commutated and forms a fully controllable DC source in conjunction with the reactor in the DC link. And DC link reactor, this will smoothen this DC which is coming here. It will smoothen this, it will filter out and limit the rate of change in the event of fault. Then you have the thyristors. The thyristors in the inverter electronically switch the DC current and to produce a three-phase output AC here of variable frequency and voltage for supplying the motor. The motor voltage commutate the inverter phase currents. At low speeds, when the motor voltage is too low to guarantee reliable commutation, artificial commutation is used. At lower speed, this back EMF will not be very high enough to cut off this thyristor. So there is an additional circuit for that. So this is a synchronous motor. This type of converter, load commutator converters, are used only with the synchronous motor. So this diagram is good enough. This explanation is also good enough. So you can draw this 6-pulse load commutator inverter, and this is explanation for this, how it is working. Okay. So this is these converters are, we are using thyristors as a switching device on both input and output bridge. So to control this converter, square waves are used. The thyristors of the output bridge are fired in step with the rotation of the motor and act as an electronic commutator. So it is fired in steps, it converts a DC into AC in this way. So this is the explanation, no need of this one. This is good enough for what is load commutator inverter. So what is a load commutator inverter, and explain the operation of a 6-pulse load commutator inverter. So AC is the input which is converted into DC. These are thyristors, it is just working like a rectifier. So you have a DC supply here. Now these thyristors are fired in such a way that it produces an AC output. Input is DC, but it converts DC into AC when it fired in steps. It goes like this. So output will be a sinusoidal waveform, or maybe you can say pulsating DC, it will be something like that. This SCR, you know, like there are two ways of turning of SCR. What are the methods of turning SCR? One is a natural commutation, one is a forced commutation. So commutation means switching off an SCR is called commutation. Natural commutation is in case of AC. During positive half cycle, the thyristor conducts, negative half cycle thyristor cut off. That is natural commutation. Forced commutations means we are turning off the thyristor forcefully. Like in DC circuits, you cannot do in the DC circuits this natural commutation. So there is no natural current zero in case of DC. So we are using a forced commutation in this case. So forced commutation can be, there are different ways in forced commutation. So in case of DC circuit, there is no natural current zero like AC. In such circuit, forward current must be forced to zero. An external circuit to commutate SCR, switching off the SCR, is known as the forced commutation. So the commutating circuit consists of components like inductors and capacitors we are using in this. Forced commutation, we are using inductors and capacitors. These commutating components cause apply reverse voltage across SCR. See, SCR can be turned off. Once SCR gate signal is given, it conducts. Now, how you can switch off this? Either by reversing the voltage or producing the current less than the holding current. These are the two ways you can switch off. So by using these inductance and capacitance, you can make a forced commutation circuits. So this has got the various classes in this, like class A, class B, class C, class D. This is the forced commutation various classes. Okay. So this is this one is not main thing is this one load commutator. You can no need to draw this diagram. This is good enough. For a 6 pulse converter, this diagram, these explanations. Then a cycloconverter, explain the working of a cycloconverter. So as I told you, we have 3 converters. One is load commutator inverter, cycloconverter, and voltage source inverter, or it's same like a VFD. Cycloconverter, we are using only thyristors without a DC bridge. There is no DC in between. It is directly input is AC, fixed AC, fixed voltage, fixed frequency into variable voltage, variable frequency. So you can, the output, the frequency can be increased or decreased. So cycloconverter converts fixed voltage, fixed frequency into a variable voltage, variable frequency in a single step without rectifying the voltage. So this can be used for synchronous and asynchronous motors. The conversion is done using power electronic switches. Here power electronic switches are thyristors, and thyristors switching them in a logical manner. Normally these thyristors will be separated in 2 halves. So there are 2 bridges, positive bridge and negative bridge. So each half will be made to conduct by turning them during each half cycle of the AC, thus enabling a bidirectional flow. So this is good enough for a cycloconverter question. What is working of a cycloconverter? Okay. So there is one circuit which I will explain you the basic concept how it is working. So this is a single phase supply here. So as we said is that the cycloconverter, as input is fixed voltage, fixed frequency. Output is variable voltage, variable frequency. Now the frequency has to be increased or decreased. Now in this case, the frequency is decreased. So it is a step down cycloconverter. It's a single phase. Now here you can see here, this is called positive bridge, this is called negative bridge, and this is a load. So the current has to flow through this like this, or the current has to flow from here like this. When the current is flowing through this load, this is positive and negative. When it is flowing from here, it is becoming positive and negative. Now how it is taking place, this is the main supply here, input AC supply Vs. Now Vs you can see here, it is given from 0 to 8 pi. So that means one cycle is finishing here, 0 to 4 pi, one cycle. Then second cycle is starting from here, finishing here. So one cycle, 2, 3, 4 cycles are there. 0 to pi means this is 0, 90, 180, then 270, and then 360. So this is the main supply voltage. So this is positive half cycle, this is negative half cycle. Now during positive half cycle, this positive half cycle, you can see here, when positive half cycle means when A is, you can see here the node A and node B. During positive half cycle, A is positive, B is negative. That means when the AC supply flows, the positive half cycle time, this will be positive, this will be negative. When this is positive, this P1 is conducting, P1 thyristor is conducting. So the current is flowing like this. So this is positive, current flows like this, current comes like this. Then it flows, because this is also forward biased. So it will flow through this and it returns through this. So that means during positive half cycle, which one is conducting? P1 and P2 is conducting. So during positive half cycle, P1 and P2 is conducting. So you get an output voltage at this side, P1, P2, you get an output voltage. V out you get here. Now during this negative half cycle, now at this cycle when P1, P2 is conducting, you see A is positive, B is positive. But what happened this side? Here you see here A is positive. So this is positive. When A is positive, this will also conduct. You see, this can also conduct. But we don't give a gate pulse to this. So during positive half cycle, only giving a gate pulse, it's a separate circuit for firing this SCR. So you have a separate gate firing circuit. Only we are giving a gating signal to P1 and P2, not to N1, and the other one will be in this case this one, N2. N2 and N1 will be no gate pulse. So only P1 and P2 is conducting during positive half cycle. Then, so positive half cycle finished. Then during the negative half cycle, A becomes negative, B become positive. So when A become negative, B become positive. Now let's see which one will conduct in this case. So when A is negative and B is positive, that means P3 will conduct. So the current is flowing like this. P3 will conduct, current flowing like this. Then it comes like this. Then it will come through this, it will goes return through this. So P3 and P4 is conducting. So during both half cycles, positive and negative half cycles, only positive bridge thyristors are fired. No thyristors fired from the negative bridge. Now during the negative bridge, during the negative of next half cycle, so once one cycle is finished here. Now one cycle you see here, in one cycle you have two output waveforms here. But it has not completed one cycle here. It is only half. So this is here one cycle is finished. In the second cycle, we are firing only negative bridge. That means second half cycle, when the positive half cycle, we are firing N1 and N2. N1 and N2 means when A is positive, B is also negative, N1 and N2 is fired. Because this is A is positive, N1 is fired. Now the current is flowing in this way. Previously the current was flowing in this way through the load. It's a resistive load, current is flowing in this way. So negative half cycle, you are firing N1 and N2. Both half cycles, positive half cycle also, negative half cycle also, N1 and N2, this positive half cycle N1 and N2, and this negative cycle N3 and 4. Now you see here, this is one period. That is the time taken to complete one cycle. Time period is, this is the T. But here that this is one cycle. One cycle is this, full cycle is still here. Because one positive half cycle, one negative to a negative half cycle, this becomes one cycle. Now the time period has increased from T to 2T. So what it indicates, time period has increased from 2 to 2T means what will happen to the frequency? Because the time period has increased, time period has increased from T to 2T. So time period is equal to 1 by F. That means input waveform from time period T and the output